Hello and welcome back to another vintage inspired video. Today we find ourselves standing right here in front of Paramount Studios, or what I like to commonly refer to it as my favorite studio of the old Hollywood era. This is where Audrey Hepburn got her career started in American films. It is also where my favorite costume designer Edith Head spent the majority of her career, but we're not here to talk about them. We're here to talk about another favorite of mine, and that is 1944's Double Indemnity. This is the studio that gave us that film, and so I thought it would be a fitting start to our video to begin here. Of course, it starred Fred MacMurray, Barbara Stanwyck, Edward G. Robinson, directed by another favorite of mine, Billy Wilder. From here, I'm going to take you by the Dietzchen house that was used in the film, and then we're going to go by the final resting spot for a few involved in this classic and pay our respects. Most of the film was shot here behind these gates. Principal photography started on September 27, 1943, with the first scenes shot being those inside the Dietzchen house, and the market was also here where Phyllis and Walter had their clandestine meetings. There are limited real-life locations where more than one or two shots of principal photography with dialogue took place. One was an underground parking lot less than a mile from the studio. Another served as the ground level exterior of Walter's apartment. It was about 2 miles away from here. The Burbank Southern Pacific Railroad, and the last, the exterior of the Dietzchen house, which we're gonna go to next. I wanted to just zoom in on the water tower here because those are pretty emblematic of the studios in Hollywood. And then also right over here, it's so hard to see because there's this large tree, but I found an old photo that was taken right back here. You could see the columns and the windows of the building on the left. And there's also this photo of Audrey Hepburn taken back there, and I wish so much I could just run over there and stand there, but I don't think they'll take too kindly to that. Across the street is a historic studio I wanted to just point out. It deserves its own video, but that is Raleigh Studios. It was founded in 1915 and Douglas Fairbanks had a production company there. Charlie Chaplin worked there, and it made the winner of the Best Picture of 1946, the best years of our lives.
So I let her have it straight between the eyes. She didn't fool me for a minute, not this time. I knew I had hold of a red-hot poker, and the time to drop it was before it burned my hand off.
Here we are up in the Hollywood Hills, and my favorite thing here, I think, is how much it still looks as it did when they filmed in 1943. There are a few differences, and I'll point those out as we go. According to the book, From the Moment They Met, It Was Murder, the only shots of this house made during principal photography occurred on the final day of filming 1 week before Thanksgiving. The shot included when Walter arrives and drives away for the first time, and a day-for-night shot of the Dietzchens leaving for the train station. No mention to the other shots was made in the book, so I'm not sure if those were process shots or sets, or maybe did still occur here as well. You can see right here, the garage door is quite different than what it was like in 1943. And the ironwork up there covering those small little port windows, that all remains the same. The shot with the Dietzchens coming down the pathway, that kind of looks like a set to me, so I think that one may have been done at Paramount. Something though I'll point out is that the trees before were palm trees, they're now replaced with cypress trees, and the pathway is now bricks. It was just concrete, it looked like before.
Take it easy, honey, we've got lots of time.
Yeah.
It was this shot right here that the book was saying was a day for night, which means, as it sounds, that they shot this during the day to look like it was nighttime. What do you prefer? Do you prefer how it was before or the change they've made here? And the scene where Walter is watching Nino go to the door, that also looks like a set to me. But the door, they did model it after the actual door, and today it still looks pretty much the same. Walking around to the side of the house just to really get a feel for how big it really is. And that scene I mentioned where Walter drives up and then drives away later, you can see to the left of the house, there's just nothing but land right there. That is something else that has changed since 1943. There are now houses that line that entire side of the street. It kind of seems like a missed opportunity here that they don't have honeysuckle outside, but I'm actually not sure if that is a plant that would even grow well in Southern California. The film was inspired by true events that took place in 1927, culminating with the execution of Ruth Snyder and Henry Judd Gray, known as the Double Indemnity Killers, on January 12th, 1928. The film's ending almost concluded in the same way, with Walter meeting his end in the electric chair. Director Billy Wilder and others involved with the film even toured the gas chamber at San Quentin to get a feel for what it was like. They went so far as to build the set and shoot the Sequence E, as it was known, at a cost of just under $10,000. These stills are the only evidence it existed, and why it was cut is up for debate. One theory is Wilder himself said he found that the ending we see in the film was the more powerful choice. The scene was shot on day 44 of a 50-day shoot schedule, but it's unclear when it was cut and if the scene was ever shown outside of the studio screening room. Here we are back at Pierce Brothers Westwood Memorial Park, and I say back because I've done a couple of videos from here. One of them highlighting arguably the most famous inhabitant, and that is Marilyn Monroe. She's buried in that area back there, and her service took place right here in this church. And beyond just noting that fact, it is worth mentioning in relation to today's video because she worked on Some Like It Hot with Billy Wilder. And his final resting spot is right here. Wilder not only directed, but wrote and produced and made some of my most favorite films: Sabrina, Sunset Boulevard, and of course, Double Indemnity. The man was prolific in the early days of Hollywood. His career spanned 5 decades and he won 7 Academy Awards. Born in what was at the time Austria-Hungary, he came to Hollywood by way of the rise of anti-Semitism in Europe. His films are regarded for their plots and memorable dialogue. As you can see right here, it says, "I'm a writer, but then nobody's perfect," which is a nod to the famous last line in the film Some Like It Hot. His film style may have been conservative, but he was known for pushing the boundaries of what was accepted socially at the time. And he is buried right here next to his wife, Audrey Wilder. And I wanted to just show next to him is Jack Lemmon, who also worked with him on the film Some Like It Hot and The Apartment. We've now moved south to Mount Hope Cemetery in San Diego, and being from here, this is a place I have passed often, and I have some family also buried here. This is the grave of Raymond Chandler, co-writer of Double Indemnity. And you may be thinking, why didn't the author of the book, James M. Cain, co-write the film? That is because he was under contract to another studio. And Chandler was not super excited about taking a role in writing this script. He was displeased with Hollywood's treatment of writers at the time, but he couldn't afford to feel that way. So he and Wilder got to work on writing the script, and they had something of a tumultuous working relationship. But Wilder did say that Chandler deserved most of the credit for the film's dialogue. Raymond Chandler has many credits to his name, but we're obviously here because of his co-writing credit with Billy Wilder on the film Double Indemnity. But he also gave us the quintessential detective character in Philip Marlowe in his 1939 novel, The Big Sleep. A character that has been portrayed many times on film, but I think most notably, because I am biased, by Humphrey Bogart in the film by the same name, The Big Sleep. Something unique about Raymond Chandler's grave is he actually has 2 headstones. He and his wife, who was 18 years his senior, married in 1924 after her divorce, and after his mother's death, he called her the beat of his heart for 30 years. He passed a few years before her, and his wishes were to be interred with her in the Cypress View Mausoleum, which is on site here. But in his depressed and often drunken state, he left no official instructions in his burial, and he ended up right here alone. But on Valentine's Day 2011, many years after the two had passed, thanks to the efforts of a fan, he got his wish and her ashes were moved from the mausoleum to right here beside his casket.
You think you're such a hot potato as a claims manager, such a wolf on a phony claim. Maybe you are. But let's take a look at that Dietzchen claim. Accident and double indemnity. Vanessa, I think I like that.
But you're not sure.
I'll have to drive it around the block a couple of times.
He started his career in the late 1920s and signed with Paramount Studios in 1934 and made a number of films with Carole Lombard and also with Barbara Stanwyck. The story goes that Wilder had MacMurray at the top of his list for Double Indemnity and constantly approached him to take the role. MacMurray later in his life said that he told Wilder he loved the script and thought it would make for a great film, but he could not do it. And that it was the first time he was offered a part that in his mind would require acting. Wilder said during the time of casting the film that MacMurray really didn't want to do it because he didn't want to play a murderer or be murdered. And for a leading man like him at that time, that would make sense. He's buried here besides his wife, June Haver, whom he married in 1954. And I would be remiss if I did not point out that actor John Candy is interred just above him. Wanted to also give an honorable mention to Edward G. Robinson, whose grave we could not visit because he is buried in Queens, New York, and also Barbara Stanwyck, whose ashes were scattered over Lone Pine, California. All right, that does it for today's video. Thank you so much for coming along with me on this tribute to the film Double Indemnity. I hope that you enjoyed, and until that next video, I'm wishing you a super swell day, and I'll see you then. Bye. And for more extras and behind the scenes, be sure to check out my Patreon page.